Hey, welcome! Thanks for tuning in. This is There's Something About Archviz, a podcast where I discuss with experts and industry leaders about the many sides of the Archviz industry. I'm your host, Federico Biancullo. I'm an Archviz artist, founder of The Big Picture, blogger, and content creator in the field of architectural representation. I'm on a journey to learn more on all things about Archviz, art direction, business, technology, you name it. And I would like you to be a part of this journey as well. Through these conversations, my hope is to bring light to not so obvious topics connected to our industry and help you grow as a professional, as an artist, and why not, as a human being as well. So please join me. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode of There's Something About Archviz. Greetings, folks, and welcome to another episode of There's Something About Archviz. Today, I'm really excited. It's a special episode for me because I have on the show one of the people that I look up to the most in the industry. He's Spanish, he's an art director and 3D artist as well, and he founded a world-famous architectural communication firm. His name is Victor Bonafonte. Victor is the co-founder of Beauty and the Beat, which was also coincidentally one of the first architectural visualization offices that used to put their personal work out in the wild. And these passion projects helped them gradually evolve and pivot the firm towards new fields outside architectural visualization. And in our chat, we talk about this and a lot more of interesting stuff. We talk about his restlessness and his passion for trying out new things, and how this passion pushed him indeed to develop a new cinematographic language for architectural animations with Landmark, which won in 2018 a CGArchitect Award for the best non-commissioned film. We also discussed the importance of having the courage to bring one's own knowledge to the table with clients, his huge passion for movies, of course, what he absorbs from these movies in his creative process, and we also talk about our common passion, video games, which, in my opinion, are a very underappreciated products when it comes to art direction. But I think I said even too much. I don't want to spoil this conversation for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy my chat with Victor Bonafonte. As I told you, I'm really happy to have you here because Beauty and the Beat has been one of my inspiration for my work as well. I don't think people don't know what you do, but anyway, I would like you to introduce yourself and what you do to the audience.
Okay, so my name is Victor Bonafonte, and basically I'm a director nowadays. I'm art director, and I'm the co-founder of Beauty and the Beat, which is my company, which is like an architectural communication company. We don't like to get completely constrained to architecture. We're doing much stuff which is not 100% architecture nowadays. But yeah, we should say that majorly we're an architectural firm. And I'm the co-founder of that company, basically.
You were an architect. I think you started when everything blew up in 2008. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was later here in my company. The company I was working for as an architect, I worked there I think for 10 years or something like that. And eventually crisis came to Spain, but in my company, I don't know for what reason it came later on. And but when it came, definitely. I was working 10 whole years as an architect, as a regular architect, signing projects and designing buildings and stuff like that. And then everything came so fast, and my boss fired me. No hard feelings, because he's a really I can only have good words about him. But he managed to do another different smaller company that was more involved in doing competitions. So I was always interested in the visual part of architecture from that time, and it served me as a catapult to a test tube for starting, doing my experiments with visuals that were really crappy, obviously, at that time. But it was my first steps into architectural illustration or whatever.
You started almost 12 years ago then. How is it different for people who are starting today? Probably what you did would not be possible today. What do you think about that?
It's a good question. To be honest, I don't know. I can tell what it's inside my guts about things. Maybe people could say right now or nowadays it's more difficult because there are more people doing this, or there are more. When I studied this, there were also people, not so many maybe, but there were other kind of difficulties that maybe nowadays younger people like you, for example, or some other people, they don't have. At that time, obviously, there were internet. I'm not so old, but the thing is that nowadays you can find a good tutorial about everything you could desire, any platform, any renderer, any technique. That at that time, yeah, there was a knowledge, but not so much knowledge. So what I'm trying to say is that each time frame has some difficulties, but I only believe in like hard work, and if you are a hard worker, in the end you're gonna get it. I mean, so in a certain way, it's a way of pumping up all the new generations, expectations, because no matter how many people are doing or are what's your competence, I mean, it's a really, you have a lot of competitors. No matter about that, I mean, I don't care about that. In the end, if you are a hard worker, if you want to learn, if you want to evolve, in the end, you're going to find something that's cool or decent for you.
Yeah, and probably it means not just tutorials, also the possibilities are a bit different from a few years ago. I'm thinking about social network as well, not just YouTube tutorials, but also the content that we put out.
Absolutely.
But there's something else that came up in my mind thinking about the work that you did with Beauty and the Beat. I think you were one of the first that used personal work as a way to brand themselves. You made personal work part of the identity of your company. I remember the image of the month that you used to do. I probably you still do them. And of course, your most recent project, the feature films Landmark, Rebirth, Insomniac Waltz. Can you try to outline a bit the process that brought you to the feature films?
So I think basically that came in a kind of an organic way. For me, as an art director of the studio, at some point, it's like, okay, I consider myself nowadays an artist. And I also consider it's an artist's duty or commitment to always keep learning and never get, stuck in the same thing, or keep doing, consistently day after day the same thing. I'm not a patient guy, and I need to, try, test new things on a daily basis. So as far as I saw, it's like, okay, before starting an architectural illustration or communication company, for me, it was like, oh, I would love to work with this studio, which is like the most famous studio, and this other studio, which is the most famous studio, and this other one. That's my main illusion. I would love to be there and to do these images such as these other studios. Some great friends nowadays, people like Mir, Luxigon at that time, and nowadays really close friends, and I wanted to do that because they inspired me a lot. They was like, okay, I have the feeling that we could drive towards that way and work with these studios. And then suddenly, I have to say that from the very first beginning in Beauty and the Beat, maybe we were lucky, or maybe what we work on a portfolio previously or whatever paid dues. But the thing is that we had we were lucky to count with these big studios from minute, not one, but maybe minute 5 in our story. But the thing is that when you get to that point and you achieve that, and then you polish your skills, and then you improve your skills, and then you do better images, better films, whatever it is, than 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, it comes a moment in which you say, okay, level up. For me, this is achieved. This part of the business is achieved. This goal is achieved, is accomplished. Where do I go now? Where do we go now? What do we do now? We have to do something different, no? So the images of the month was like the first step for me, because it was like I told the guys at the studio, the people at the studio team is like, okay, let's do one thing. I mean, sometimes, it's always exciting working with architects, but at some point, and I think it's something that all of us could agree with this, at some point you are creatively free, but until some extent, okay? I understand it's part of the game. It's like one thing is doing a personal project and another thing is doing a project for other guy that has to also show those images to other client and the other client to other client. So it's a big chain and it's a really complex processes, most likely in big projects. So I understand that, but I told the team, okay, what if we do something on our complete own? We don't have any obligation with any client, any constraint, and we do basically what the fuck we want to do in a certain way. I mean, crude and raw, but it's like that. It's like I want to do an image a month that it's purely us. And we are going to exercise our creative muscles. We are going to see things in a different way that maybe we would do if we would have a client there telling you things, telling where to go, or or at least trying to have a communication in terms of art direction, and be completely free. So that was all the intent behind the image of the month, and in the end, it was a good move because I remember at that time that I don't want to be pretentious because I'm not saying that we invented that. Obviously, it's not like that. But at that point, I didn't see so many images done on any other studios in this way.
Absolutely. The first ones that I saw were from Beauty and the Beat. And Beauty and the Beat was one of the first, among the first offices popping out in my Facebook feed in that case, that were actually putting out for the general public images made for their own, fun.
Yeah.
That's something that other offices picked up afterwards. That's why I wanted really to ask you this, because I remember that you made the image of the month, you made the images made for fun, a really strong statement about Beauty and the Beat.
Yeah, because I believe in that. It's like, as I said, it's like you're an artist and your duty is to keep communicating things. I think it would be really boring if we only measure our success as an artist just based on the number of clients we have, of the size of the projects we do. I mean, at some point that's banal. It's like, but that's not being an artist. Being an artist is struggling day by day. And for example, trying to drive to a different part of the business, or trying to pivot to another thing, or try to express things in a different way with other techniques, other programs, other languages. That's being an artist.
I'm going to ask you something a bit personal. You can avoid the answer if you wish. You mentioned that at a certain point you reached your goal. And you also said something really important, that it doesn't matter how many clients you have. It doesn't matter how big the projects you work on are. Is it something that was already clear to you when you started, or something that you realized during the process and took you time to process? Sorry for the wordplay.
No, I think I realized obviously during the time, because time is the best teacher you can have. And it is like when you start a company or you start in some media, whatever it is, it's like you want it all, or it's not that you want it all. It's like you want to show everybody that you can do things right and you can do things in a beautiful way and you can be a good artist. So everything you want to work or to collaborate with as many studios as possible, big ones, small ones, because I also have to say that I enjoy a lot collaborating with smaller studios. It comes a point with time that you realize, what I want to do is to be happy with what I do. And I want to be inspired. And I want to be empowered all days to do something that, excites me. Because if I don't get any excitation of what I do day by day, it's going to be extremely boring. And I'm going to lose all my motivation. And I'm a man of motivation. If I don't feel myself motivated, obviously, I'm not going to be able to reproduce a good piece of artwork, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I don't think so many artists actually stop to think about doing something fun to regenerate their mental energy somehow, because it's all a matter of mental energy. I can tell you, because I'm in a similar situation at times. I'm not inspired, I'm a bit drained from work. Anyway, we were talking about image of the month. After the image of the month, how did you come up to the idea of developing a new language for architectural animation? It's a language that actually it's very close to the language of feature films, of art direction made for features.
Yeah, I think that came up with Landmark, and I love that project. It meant a lot to not only to me but to the whole studio, I guess. And for me, it was a milestone in my kind of artistic path. At that point, we didn't do animation for architects because my thought on this was like, I wasn't close to the usual architectural visualization language in terms of films, of architectural movies.
Yeah, when I think about movies in architectural visualization, the first thing that comes into my mind is those horrible walkthrough in which you bash through a door of a building and you clip everything. So yeah.
And you're gonna puke because
Yeah.
you feel sick of because everything is really fast, and then also you see 3D humanoids, moving like, everything really fucked up. I never wanted to do that thing. And that is why for a long time we were in the shadows in terms of animation. I wasn't motivated to do that because it was like, okay, doing an image with a client at sometimes could be challenging, at sometimes could be relaxed, and sometimes could be really hell. And when it's hell, at least the hell, it lasts 1 week, maybe. But when it's a movie, I don't want this to last for 1 month, okay? And in the end also, the product is not what I think, what I imagine. So the thing was evolving as a natural evolution from image of the week. It was like, I told the guys, okay, guys, I have the idea of a movie. And it's going to be a movie that is going to talk about architecture. It's going to talk about the environment. And it's going to talk about what I love in movies. And I'm going to try to mix all that together. And I would love that architects at least would consider in the future to try to do something with a more creative vibe. If this serves as an example, or if this serves as a guide or as a path, as a different path, as a detour, I would be more than happy that this would happen. And that way started Landmark. It was a really hard year for me because at the time of producing Landmark, I stepped out of the production in the studio. At that time, I was doing production still because I like to do production some time. But I was more like doing art direction at that point and also producing 100% Landmark and also doing a big VFX master at that point. So it was a really busy hell of a year. But in the end, I mean, it paid dues. Landmark was beyond my original expectations because the way it was planned. I mean, I'm a long-time movie lover. I love any kind of movie normally, from big VFX films, from author films, and what I love about cinema is the language in cinema, which is completely and diagonally opposed to what we normally do in architectural. I wouldn't call them films. It's like architectural animations. They are not films. They are animations. Something that is moving, but something that is moving is not necessarily a film. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to try to instill. So for example, some of the shots were thought more as if it was a VFX film. So we used lots of projections. We used, I mean, it wasn't the typical approach to an architectural film, which is like, okay, everything is 3D and, we put the people like these humanoids, or we do this kind of fly-throughs, never-ending fly-throughs. No, this is cinema. What we want to do is cinema, but applied to a building, which is maybe the main character along with the environment.
About the environment, can you tell me what inspired you for that? Because in our pre-show talk, we mentioned Iceland. I love Iceland as a country. I love the landscape of Iceland. It's ever-changing. You go with your car around the island and every 20 kilometers you see something different. Was that an inspiration for you? Which others were your inspiration sources for that particular project? I remember seeing it at the D2 2018 and I was wondering, wow, how did you come up with all this? What were the inspirations? I saw a lot of Iceland, of course, but I was curious about all the rest of it.
Yeah, basically, I mean, I've always liked this kind of landscape. If I wouldn't be art directing also in my company, maybe I would be an environment artist because I love environments. I really, I love it. It's the closest discipline in terms of visual art, closest to nature at some point. So I love environments. And before starting the project, I considered several places to maybe do this or that. And to be honest, Iceland was really a place of choice because there were so many contrasts, and at the same time, it served me to depict the movie in a really monochromatic kind of thing, and not to get lost in too many color schemes, but something really direct and really raw. And I came into these landscapes and also this, I think it's called rainy spiara or something like that. I don't know in Icelandic how it's pronounced, but it's like a beach with this black kind of soil and stuff like that. And I thought maybe this together with these fumaroles and with these green mountains without any trees, because I don't want trees in this particular film for production.
But have you ever been actually to Iceland?
No,
Never.
I haven't been. It's curious.
I've been there last year before everything happened, so I was really lucky I could get there. And I can tell you, you nailed it.
Oh,
You nailed it,
very
because
much.
Iceland has almost no trees. The beach that
Yeah.
you mentioned, I was there, it's almost monochromatic. When
Yeah.
there's mist, it's like, shades of gray. That's it.
Yeah.
You have the black sand, you have the depth, you have these huge, rocks in the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
You nailed that. And the green as well.
I had to say it's a shame because I've done Landmark, and later than that I did Rebirth, and it's a shame because it's like there are two projects that are really Icelandic kind of landscape, and I haven't been there still. Honestly, I had the plan to go last year, but this year. But the thing is, like, this fucked up situation put an end to that plan momentarily. But definitely, I will eventually get there. I don't know when, but I will get there, obviously. But yeah, I gather like zillions of references of photographs from places there and other places such as Scotland and stuff like that. And in the end, that was the final ingredients.
And what about the architecture? You went really full brutalist on that one, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a long time fan of brutalism, and I wanted something really, really sculptural, something really pure in terms of form, for several reasons. Basically, it's for a look depth. It's like a look development of the film. I wanted something like that. There's a lot of inspirations in a lot of sci-fi movies, as we know, as Star Wars, Blade Runner, blah, blah. There's a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, I wanted something really brutal in terms of shape and also in terms of size, no? And as an added element was that it had to be done in free time for the rest of the team. I was like 100% of my time that year in that production, but the people at the team, they weren't all that time because they were doing projects. So I needed something simple. I needed simplicity. Simplicity was playing in our advantage, obviously. So yeah, from a long time I've been really fan of brutalism and the essentialism in terms of shape.
One last question about Landmark, but this in general can be applied to all your feature film projects. What do you actually take from movies, technically? You see a movie that you love. What do you apply then in your projects?
I could apply anything. I love movies, as I said, and I could apply from the framing of a camera to the lens distortion of a shot, to the color correction of a film. Nowadays, for example, I'm amazed how many good, technically speaking, series you can see on Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, whatever it is, and how many fucked up series are in terms of a script or story or whatever it is. They are really bad ones, but at some point, technically speaking, all of them are top notch in terms, for example, in color correction, color grading, but other things in the series are really bad. But you can, for example, adapt or take that. You can steal that and apply to your project. Inspiration in movies is a good thing about movies. You can take, for example, ways of dealing with shots. As I explained in Making of Landmark, it's like, okay, if I don't have the time to do this shot with all this, topography, and I don't want to do this in 3D, and I have a limited time and resources, okay, let's do muddy painting, let's do projections, let's do as people do in cinema industry.
Old style, like they did in Star Wars.
Yeah, that's it. But in the end, the shot works better than maybe if we have done that in pure 3D, everything in the end. So, there's a lot of things to be learned from cinema, and there's also much more things that can be applied from cinema to your architecture duties.
But in general, are architects receptive to this kind of language? Because sometimes, you know better than me that it's difficult to deal with some kind of clients with their 8mm cameras, their beautiful sunny skies and happy people. Did you find reception? Did you find, some kind of sensibility for the language that you developed in your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think so. Other different thing is not all the architectural firms would go that way, which doesn't mean they are not appreciative, but some of them absolutely they like that language, and some of them they want to go that language. But the thing is that nowadays we are lucky that in animation we can choose the projects we want to get involved in. We are really selective about animation. We don't do zillions of animations yearly. Most of them, or I would say 100% or 90%, 95%, I think all of them are confidential because of confidentiality clauses, because they are really, really specific projects. But we want to keep being really selective with the jobs we do in animation, because the way I see it is, maybe it would sound pretentious, but it's not, honestly. The thing is, this is the way we work in terms of animation. In the end, it's like, if we're going to do an animation, we want to do it with this kind of approach. If you don't want to do it with this approach, I completely understand. I completely respect that. But we work this way. We can pretend to be other people when we do animations or when we do images.
It's kind of the holy grail of being a visual consultant. Having to say to your client, Mr. Client, we are happy that you came to us, but what you want is not what we do. So it's better off that you find someone else to do this. No hard feelings, but it's not what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And with no, as you said, it's not hard feelings, because we appreciate deeply that some companies want to come with us for stills, for animations, or whatever it is. But for example, when it comes to the point that we love what we have done, for example, in Landmark, and then in Rebirth, or what you've done with lately with Somniacs Walls or whatever, and then they present you the project they want to do or the animation they're planning. The technical script is like, okay, we want like a fly through. It's like, guys, I think we are not to understand each other. So
yeah, sometimes it's strange. On a logical layer of thought, you think that clients come to you because they saw what you do, what you're capable of, so they wouldn't ask you something different. But it happens all the time. Then you have to tell them, no, this is not what we do.
Yeah,
it will work, but it doesn't actually happen.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
So I see that anyway, this kind of language has had an impact on your work, on what you do. And back to the animation projects that you do commercially, can you just share with me the percentage of architecture and the percentage of anything else that is not architecture?
Oh, that's a good question, man. Because they're really, really varied kind of projects. And as I said, I mean, we don't get involved in zillions of animations yearly because, as I said, we prefer to do less but better. But I would say that architecturally speaking, they would be in, let's say, 60-40 or 70-30 or something like that. It's like this architecture, the rest is not architecture. It's maybe something related more with video games, with some advertising thing. Maybe it's some experimental kind of material, whatever it is. But yeah, it should be like 70-30, 60-40, something like that. And honestly, I hope that in the future, part that it's not architecture, it raises up even more, because we are doing lots of stuff on those regards, or me, myself, I'm doing lots of stuff on those regards.
So basically doing these projects for passion, Landmark, Rebirth, and Somniac Walls, they help you pivot towards other fields somehow.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, Rebirth, as you mentioned, that was not a passion project. It was for the guys at Quicksilver, but it was also Unreal. And basically the thing was that after we finished Landmark, I remember I have a good relation with Teddy from Quicksilver, which they have a really cool company. I mean, I love them. They're really nice people. And the thing was that after finishing Landmark, which they supported us with their mega scans for that project, I was invited to do a lecture in Sweden in an event. And I was speaking with Teddy, and he told me, I'm going to go to that event also, and it would be great to meet personally, because also we are talking of maybe starting a project also with the people from Epic Games, and and it would be cool to talk about this. And basically, when we got there and we meet each other and the guys from Epic Games, basically what they wanted was to do something what was the perfect mix between Landmark and the Book of the Dead. That was a demo that the people from Quixel did some time ago, also for Unity, I think, which is really beautiful. And the preconception of Rebirth was that it's like, let's do something that it's a mix of these incredible films, and let's do that in real time, in Unreal. So I was hired in that project as a proper art director for the project. I was the art director of that project, of Rebirth, of that cinematic. And so, as I said, obviously that paid dues Landmark, because at that very first moment we were already pivoting to other pieces, which was more related to video games or video game cinematic or virtual production.
Wow. It's not something that many people could pull off. I want to go back to one thing, that is your works on still images, because that's what you started with and what probably most people in the industry still know you for. What kind of lessons did you bring from the feature films to the way that you do still images? If there's any way that helped you modify some things, or pipeline or art direction things, whatever it comes to your mind.
I would say, as I said, you can learn zillions of things from cinema. I would say that, for example, framing cameras is something you can learn a lot from cinema, or how you establish depth based on subjects happening in a frame. You can learn a lot in color grading, in how color affects to your images and the mood you're thinking of your images. You can learn a lot, for example, in synthesizing, because as far as I see, there's a problem, not with architectural visualization, but sometimes with clients. And nowadays, I don't spend too much time in social media, because I'm really focusing what I'm doing right now, which is like several productions at this point. But when I have the perception that when I see, these forums or Facebooks or Instagrams, or I see these people, for example, of Fabio and Jason, what they did in this lockdown, these proposals of doing, theme-based images, which is great. It's a great idea. What I see or what I detect is that artists, architectural visualization artists, are really, really talented people, are really imaginative people, are really, people that they have lots of technical, not only technical, when I say technical, to do a 3D thing.
It's a matter of culture as well.
Yeah. But you see that it's there. Okay, there's a lot of culture that maybe you would see in commercial images. Maybe those people are doing with other studios, with architectural firms. You wouldn't say the same, okay? Because so then you think, okay, maybe the problem is not the artist itself, because the artist, it has the knowledge too that they have learned from cinema, from whatever it is, from photography, and maybe the client, it's like the one that at some point maybe deviates from those things, from those values that are really, really important. But yes, I think that you could bring zillions of inspiration from cinema, photography, even sculpture. When you look at a piece of a sculpture and you see how light reacts towards the sculpture and the volume it creates, all of that you can translate into an image in a certain way. The hard task is to find how, or to achieve that. Definitely, you have to try that.
The case study of Fabio and Jason's challenges, the D2 challenges, it's really interesting because it puts the artist, the architectural visualization artist, in a different suit. It's what you basically did at the beginning with the image of the month. They have no client. They can just do whatever they want freely. They have a general brief, but then everything is up to them. And that's great, because then they discover maybe things of themselves they didn't know. They go gather references that they couldn't do during projects. I think the hardest thing now is, how do we translate our knowledge into commercial projects? And how do we convey to a client the value of this knowledge and tell them, okay, this is what we can offer, and that's why you should take that into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's like, in the end, unless you're talking with something that it's really egocentric as a client, you're going to think that you are the professional, but you are the architect professional. I mean, you are the architect. So maybe you are the director, but you are not the director of photography. So obviously, if a director is a good director, he would rely in a good director of photography, and then he will, trust him. And if he does not trust him, it would be a failure maybe for him, for the film. So what I'm trying to say is that it's your duty to not be ashamed of what you are when you're talking with your client. It's like, for me, when I talk with clients, I never approach the thing as, this is the level in which the client is, and this is the level in which I am. No. I always, obviously, if we would talk about artistic knowledge, I would say that I'm above you, because I've trained myself for
You are
that.
trained, yeah, that's
I'm
true.
trained for that, and I'm trained on a daily basis. But obviously, we have to make that work with your vision of the project, because you are above me in terms of directing the whole thing. I mean, you know your project, you know what you want to do. Leverage is the thing. I mean, everything is at the same level, me and you. So the conversation is direct, and I would need to have the confidence to tell you what is not going to work, in my opinion, and what is going to work. And we can debate that, and also we can negotiate that, okay? Because at the end, it's not also the thing that's saying, okay, I am the artist, and this, I would put my scarf down and side, and I would say, okay, if you don't trust what I'm telling you, okay, go fuck yourself. No, it's not that. Absolutely. We are both parts, the client and you, we are supposed to, row together in the same direction. So at some point, you have to negotiate things. Because what you think it would be a perfect image, maybe for the client, it isn't completely perfect, because it's lacking something that it's really important for them. And you also have to understand that.
Yeah, and you know that this is another huge topic on which we could talk about for hours and hours. This of the client that wants to put themselves in the in the suit of the art director, because there's architects that, they have this kind of very strong brand image. They want the images the way they do it. So at this point, it doesn't really make sense that you go to an external company.
To be honest, I think the conversation is even more exciting when we don't talk too much about clients, because I mean, these things about clients, they always exist. And as I said, it's something you have to arrive to a good dialogue. But also, you never have to be ashamed about your knowledge, because you have that knowledge and you have it in your interior. And I believe in a good. I always believe in good communication. I mean, you don't have to yell to nobody. You don't have. If your dialogue with your client is reasonable, it will be reasonable if you have learned lots of things during the time. I think in the end, they will respect your opinion. Maybe at some point it won't be, 100% your vision, but it would be a high percentage of your vision.
Yeah, and there's also an issue of chain of command, especially for bigger names, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to close this chat with something else about inspiration, because you earlier mentioned that you draw a lot of inspirations also from, of course, movies and video games as well. If you were to name a few, just three among video games, movies, TV shows that influenced your vision the most, which ones would you mention?
Oh, that's the most difficult question in the world.
Because you have just to pick three of them,
Oh, no, I would pick two or one or whatever it is. I don't know. I mean, basically, I like to nurture myself with as many good and bad stuff I can see. Okay, because good stuff is always valuable, but bad stuff is also really valuable. You can distinguish something that is good and something that is shit if you have seen shit also. So, I mean, that's a good learning in shitty movies, shitty books, or shitty.
It's a way of learning what you don't have to do, what you must not do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for example, books, all classic literature for me, there was a time I used to read a lot Paul Auster books. At some point also I enjoyed a lot Woody Allen's books, because Woody Allen is really well known from movies, obviously, which I also admire. But his books are not so well known, and I think they're really hilarious. Recently I came across 1 year or something like this book called Atlas Shrugged from Ayn Rand, I think. Yeah, it's a really cool book also. I mean, in terms of movies, what could I say? I mean, I love cinema. There are always my sci-fi stuff, geek side, which brings me to, Star Wars, to, Blade Runner, Star Wars, the old ones. I would say that I love Terry Gilliam language, cinematographical language. I love everything about Terry Gilliam since Monty Python until the last stuff that he's been doing. I mean, he's somebody that has a different way of doing things visually and cinematographically speaking. I enjoyed a lot. I love a lot Tim Burton at the beginning. Not recently, but at the beginning, yes, I love it. And Akira, for example, in terms of manga, I love manga, and Otomo thing was amazing. In terms of TV shows, sorry, for example, my all-time favorites like Sopranos, also Scorsese, all the films of Scorsese. I love The Wire. I think it was one of the best TV shows I've ever seen. And also recently I came across, I didn't see it when it was premiered and stuff, but I enjoyed a lot. I had to say Mr. Robot. I think it's like a brilliant TV show in lots of aspects, not only in the story and the script and the stuff, but also in terms of cinematographically speaking, in terms of colors, in terms of lots of shots that are, for me, are mythical. And I think that's in terms of movies or TV shows, books, and video games. I'm an old guy, as I said. My first computer was a Spectrum 48K back in the 80s, and since games, I played at that point from a Spanish company called Dynamic. That was really a huge thing in the 80s here. Then I passed to those classic ILMs or Lucasfilm, LucasArts. It was LucasArts, such as, Monkey Island, Green Fandango. Those were golden, as I said. And then I moved to PlayStation, so I enjoyed Hideo Kojima games. All the Silent Hills games were the first three Silent Hills, or four. The first four Silent Hills for me were incredible.
If you were to give an award for the best art direction in video games nowadays?
Bringing me to the point that there's a lot of Insomniac's awards that it's Silent Hill. I mean, it drinks a lot from Silent Hill. So, as we said, everything connects to everything. I mean, movies to video games to movies with architecture. And nowadays, in terms of art direction, I would say by far, The Last of Us Part 2, the art direction by John Sweeney, which I admire this guy from a long time. And also Eitan Sana worked there, and lots of artists there. In terms of art direction, it's just perfect, that game, for me. It has everything. It needs to have a video game which is a strong story. Problem nowadays with games, at least in my opinion, is like open world games. They're cool. It's like, it's cool to have a game that gives you like 60 plus hours of game without repeating. But at some point, I prefer a game that it's like 10 hours long, and maybe it's not going to be replayable. I don't give a fuck. The story, the experience, it's amazing. It's like I've been 10 hours completely breathless with the script. And Last of Us, for example, Part 2, for me, has that it's like, it's not 60 hours, maybe it's 20 or 30.
Yeah.
It's really long, but it's like, man, this is a movie. And if you see the early concept art sketches that these guys did, they nailed it. It's like the game are those sketches. And amazing.
I also prefer games that are kind of railroaded, but they have a strong story behind. I haven't played The Last of Us Part 2 because I just don't like this kind of stories, the whole concept of the game. I know it's a great game. I have to force myself playing that. I loved God of War, the reboot of the series, also the way that it was shot.
It's beautiful. I also played in this lockdown. I don't have time to play nowadays games, but when I had beginning of the lockdown, I had a little bit more of time to play, a little bit. And I ended up Red Dead Redemption Part 2, which was an open world, but it's different. I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing game. But yes, also God of War, it's a great. Death Stranding by Hideo Kojima is great. And I've been recently replaying with my son this Jedi Fallen Order by Respawn, which I think it's a really cool game because normally Star Wars games are really shitty. I don't know for what reason they screwed up so many times. This game for me reminded me of these old school Star Wars 3D games, the first ones, and the Jedi Academy or Jedi whatever the fuck it is. And this one had a really strong story and design production also.
Well, we touched a lot of topics. We also even talk about video games. I hope audience is going to be interested. I'm super interested in video games. I think there's a lot to explore also for artists nowadays in video games. But anyway, I just want to thank you for your time because I know you have a busy schedule and you made room for this chat. So thank you, Victor. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. It's been great talking about all this stuff with you guys, and hope at least it's inspirational for somebody or somebody can learn something.
I think it was inspirational for sure. Do you want to leave something with the audience? Any announcement to do or something like that,
Announcement? Oh, honestly, the only announcement is that from after summer, I've been less visible in social media and stuff like that for several reasons. First of all, it's because I was spending too much time and effort in that thing. And I decided to, instead of that, to focus in 3 productions I'm doing. The only announcement is that, I'm cooking something, a really, really kick-ass projects, but that takes time. And I'm not the kind of guy that want to... I like to tease people, but I want to teach people with something is a degree of brilliance that for me is acceptable. So the thing is that maybe you're not going to know from me in some time because I'm so immersed in the production of that stuff. It's not going to be something for 1 month or 2 months, maybe. It's going to take longer than that, but I can assure you that it's going to be mind-blowing. At least I'm really, really passionate about it, and I'm really and heavily driven about it.
I can see you're invested into this.
It's not a proper announcement. The only announcement is that I'm working my ass on something really, really cool.
All right. I'm really looking forward to see what it's going to be.
Yeah, thank you. I just one last thing. It's it's a message to the community or the people. I've heard recently there's a lot of people that, we are struggling with this global situation with clients, with staff, blah, blah, blah. And I would like to give my good vibrations to all the people and to never lose faith on what you do and keep working harder day by day, and eventually things will solve by themselves at some point. When you're maybe in a difficult moment, you think that's not going to happen, but it does happen. So I hope that all of you are safe. You stay, creative, stay passionate, and keep moving forward.
Yeah, times are tough, but I see a lot of passion from the community at the moment. I see a lot of things happening anyway, so I'm positive as well about this. So I'm not that worried about the people of our community somehow. I think we'll manage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Victor, thank you again for your time.
It was great.
See you next time then.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcasting app and get a new episode every second week. If you like this episode, help us growing and improving the show by rating and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Got a question, or is there something you would like me to cover in a future episode? Write me an email at podcast@bigpicturevisual.com. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.